Welcome. I intend to bring to you the truth about the EU. Who I am? I'm just a messenger. That's all I am. Trying to give you the truth and the facts. Let's start with the EU, shall we? European Union. 6 constitutional treaties are designed to build a dictatorship over you and your rights. The EU has the laws to empower a police state, enforced after the Lisbon Treaty is ratified. The EU's 111,000 regulations will bring us a Soviet-style command and lead us into poverty. Unelected EU dictators will control the nuclear weapons of former nations of Britain and France. The EU will compel us to hand over all our armed forces to the EU. Our armed forces and the police have been told that they will have to swear a new oath to the EU or be fired. The EU's 111,000 regulations will rigidly control our personal lives more than any nation in history. The EU regulations now cost us 100 billion a year. Better Regulation Commission Annual Report 2015. When enforced, those regulations will destroy most of our 4.5 million small businesses. Up to 13.5 million will be unemployed after the EU closes these small businesses. The 111,000 regulations will make us subject to continual arrest. SOCPA 2005. There are now 13,095 crimes against the EU on the British Statute Book. We will be stopped on the streets for continual checks on our EU ID cards after ratification. The EU's constitutional treaties will replace the British Constitution after the ratification. The EU treaties will close Westminster Parliament when its 5 years expire. The EU road pricing and chips will keep the state informed of our exact position. Huge fines, taxes will be enforced under the EU's road pricing, congestion charging and global warming policies. The EU's regulations plan will abolish England and our 48 countries in favour of 9 EU regions. The 9 EU regions will report directly to Brussels, not to Westminster, which will be a defunct EU Regional Council office at best. The EU regulation plan will abolish the 19,579 councillors. British common law will be replaced by EU corpus juris. Governments are now above the law. Police have shot over 30 innocent people dead since 1992 and are not being successfully prosecuted. 1,100 deaths whilst in police custody from 1992, and again with no successful prosecutions made against them. Police shoot to kill policy is now in force, illegal under British common law. But it is legal under the EU corpus juris. The EU conceived in Germany from the 22nd of June in 1940 as the EEC speech by Hermann Göring. First EEC conference, Berlin University in 1942, 13 Nations Summit, Berlin 1943, run by von Ribbentrop. After the fall of Germany, the Germans switched the EU from that of Nazi to one of communist basis in 1946. Hitler's Durchverteidigungsdienst Intelligence Department, DVD, still controls the EU development. Edward Heath, Geoffrey Rippon, Roy Jenkins was recruited by the DVD in 1958 as saboteurs. DVD has arranged finance to put pro-EU ownership into British newspaper groups. The EU has been sabotaging Britain with German Frankfurt School techniques since the 1950s. The EU's main subversive organisation in Britain is called the Common Purpose, was run from the ODPM. The EU's Common Purpose has trained 30,000 local leaders for the post-democratic era. The Common Purpose has been inside and ran the NHS for 20 years, controls it and has wrecked it. The Common Purpose has over 400 staff in the BBC, censoring out any anti-EU news and current affairs. Common Purpose is transferring power from councillors to the unelected council executives. The Common Purpose has built the EU gravy train inside local and national governments. Common Purpose has built most of Britain's 8,500 quangos, costing us 167 billion per annum. These quangos bribe and complement pro-EU local officials and businessmen with 150,000 plus salaries. EU quangos are the reason why your council tax charges are going through the roof. The EU is totally corrupt and cannot account for 95% of its expenditure. The EU has over 200,000 offshore bank accounts from which it pays bribes. We now lose over 30 billion a year from trading with the EU, compared to when we were outside of the EU and have an even balance of payments. The EU constitution is similar to the Soviet, and EU commissioners similar to the Soviet Politburo members. The EU Parliament is a sham with no real power, just like the Soviet Parliament. The leadership of the Conservative Party has been controlled since the 1960s. The Labour and Lib Dem leaderships have been controlled by the EU for over 20 years. That's why your vote does not count for anything, just empty promises. The Amsterdam Treaty in 1997 gave the EU control of our immigration, which is now running at over 2.6 million per year. Our infrastructure cannot cope with the 10 million immigrants that are imposed upon us by the EU since 1997. 380,000 skilled British people emigrate annually to escape from the EU and its overcrowding. TTIP, or Transatlantic Trade Agreement, is a corporate power grab on a scale never before seen by the likes of me and you. It will allow them to not disclose what is in your food, on your packaging, to allow GMO foods to be sold to you and me without disclosure. It will give the EU and the United States of America the power to sue Great Britain and other countries for non-compliance. It will place the power of corporate bodies in a higher position than government. It will open up the NHS and other public services into privatisation for US corporate bodies. Basically, If you can't afford a life-saving operation, then you or your child dies. TTIP will also put 1 million jobs on the line. Thank you for listening.